The idea for the hallucination episode actually took a lot of planning, a lot longer than any episode we've ever done before.
I thought it was very, different for the show because we never do things like that, and it was actually really weird. I felt like when we were setting it up, it was like a different show almost.
I actually really like it. It's really, really interesting. It's something new, something creative. So I'm really excited to see how it turns out, actually.
I have been asking Dustin for about 30 years to let me visual effect the show. No, it's too risky, and finally he came and said, oh, we're gonna do all this shit. I was like, yes, I was so excited. And there was all kinds of things we were supposed to do, but we only did a few out of them.
I didn't really know what was going on, kind of like how everyone feels when you're first coming down here and we're just like, oh, we're gonna shoot today. What's going on? So I didn't really know. John just kind of asked me, he asked me for the part. He's like, oh, will you play blah, 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 and I was like, sure, whatever you need, I'll be there. And I just showed up and I was like, what am I doing? So it was interesting.
Well, pretty much two things were sort of the deciding factors for how we decided to do the hallucination episode. The first thing was that Belle's character had been an addict since the beginning of the show, and he really needed closure. It had gotten to the point where his addiction was just getting worse and worse. He'd gotten multiple threats from Thomas saying, you clean yourself up, you're a screw up, and he couldn't stay an addict forever because that's not interesting, and no one wants to see no character progression, especially in someone who's the main character. There really was no other option for who this episode would be about because he had the biggest problems, he was the main character, he'd been on it the longest, people had the most interest in what was going to happen to him. So it needed to be him. We needed to end the addiction thing somehow, and in order to do that, your character needs to hit rock bottom. So that's what the episode symbolized. It symbolized the absolute worst, that moment when everything that's just wrong with your life and wrong with you kind of hits you all at the same time in just this terrible, terrible, fantastical way.
We had been talking about the idea of doing an episode that was kind of like a psychological thriller for a long time since now. And when you do a show like what we do, like a procedural show, if you could call it that, you try to stay in the realms of reality a lot, and sometimes it gets really exciting trying to make something that's fake look real, but then every now and then you want to make something that's real look not real, look fictional, something that's not possible in real life. So I think after the last couple years of trying really hard and doing a really good job making things look like they should in real life, it was a lot of fun for everybody to take a step back from that and do something, supernatural, if you will.
The second thing was we really wanted to do something different, something completely outside the box, different from the way the system has ever been before. And we wanted to sort of test the limits of our capabilities by using lighting, the fog machine, which is like awesome, I love the fog machine, candle lighting, angles, different effects, just crazy stuff that we didn't have the opportunity to do before because, this isn't a supernatural drama, it's a crime drama.
And we talked about it probably about 2 years ago. Like we said, we do a hallucination episode, and kind of like everything we think about, it just kind of dwindles away. But this came back a few times. I was like, oh shit, we're actually doing it, and we did it.
What we knew from the very beginning, when we first decided this, was that all the characters needed to be Belle's interpretation of these characters. Not necessarily who they really are, but what he thinks they are.
Everything and everyone and every event that happens all was coming from Belle's mind. He wasn't actually traveling anywhere, and everything would only be as he would see it. Like, if you look at Monica's character, was the most vibrant example of this and how she was in this episode. How she was dressed like different than she normally dressed. She was a lot more revealing in her outfit, a lot more flamboyant in her color palette. She was made a lot of unnatural advances on Belle's character during the episode. And a lot of that came from two things. The first being that Belle saw her character as someone who always wanted to get in your head, someone who was really mysterious. The second thing that Monica represents is Belle's problems with romance. Whereas you'll notice she made a ton of advances to him, very obvious advances throughout the episode, and they all just went completely over his head. And that's indicative of his character, where that's happened often in his past, a lot of times during the show, and he has a very serious problem with contact and commitment and feelings in general.
Who Monica really is aside, because that's a big mystery, the fact is that she comes off as this nosy, flamboyant, ridiculous person, and being female, that can often be interpreted as kind of like, sexy and ridiculous. So what I knew that I needed to do is wear a more provocative color, dress in a more provocative way, and be not just sort of a little bit too grabby, but even overemphasize that, because it's a hallucination and everything is going to be over the top. So my job, I decided from the very beginning, was to use more like tones of voice, you know, purr sometimes, whine sometimes, just do like random like touchy moments when there's really no reason to be touching him, and just stuff that Belle would think that Monica would do, but also in his subconscious would be really uncomfortable for him.
Sergeant Bell, Detective Haggerty. Can I have a word, please?
John Angeloni's character appeared looking like he walked right out of The Untouchables in that episode on purpose, because it was actually John's idea that was a good idea, that Belle might see his character as like an old-fashioned detective, you know, with the big trench coat and the hat and all that. And so that's what he wore, which right when you see that, you kind of look in that scene, things are a little bit off, and that was kind of like the snowball effect of how it just got crazy to the point where it was really obvious you were seeing a hallucination.
Oh, you must be the murder house from Wildwood.
That's right. Sergeant Alex Bell, and this is
Detective Monica Haggerty, and you are?
Rita's a complex character because you have to think of who she was before, but without giving too much away, because Belle doesn't even really know who she is yet. She's just like, you look really familiar. And that's a pretty tough thing to do.
Everything about it was great. All the acting was great. Vicky exceeded all expectations. She did such a great job that, I mean, I'm so glad that she did it. It really looked amazing. I'm brandishing a knife. And there's really, I have no regrets about any of it.
She played a representation of herself in Belle's like nightmare, which is why she wasn't herself. She was Rita Summers. She was a personification of Rachel Belle, and that's why Belle could remember her but couldn't quite place who she was.
Oh, hey, Belle. The alcohol scene was significant. We laid that out where the prominent thing in the scene was this table full of just like rum. There were 2 different types of rum. There was a wine bottle that I like broke later. But no, we had the alcohol scene, and the reason that's important is because at that point, he's looking for Rita, for Rachel, and he promised he would find her, and Monica doesn't seem to want him to find her. A, because she doesn't like her, but B, because what Rita represents is, you know, what happened to him so long ago, the life that he lost, all of his guilt, things that he suppressed because he didn't want to think about it or didn't want to deal with it or was afraid of it, and he's seeking that in this scene. And so what Monica represents is the part of his mind that's trying to keep him from finding that truth and dealing with it. The addiction that wants to say, no, sit down, have a drink, don't worry about it. And then Rita, who is the problem that he really needs to deal with. So that room represented a choice for him. He could sit down and he could have a drink and he could ignore his problems like he's always done, or he could go find Rita. And that was what he did. And Monica argued. She tried to get him to stay because she was that part of his mind, but that part of his mind ultimately failed.
You're playing it by ear like always. The drugs clouded your judgment, and I had to make the decision. There was no John there was no Captain Andrews, and there's Shane there to blame for that.
There was someone to blame. You.
I was really excited to be back on the system again, actually, because I've been away for so long, I just missed it.
I'll make it go.
Are you ready for me to touch your face?
At least you're not eating my face. Don't you? Alright.
Really messy, like overly messy. Damn
It
it.
doesn't need to be that much.
No?
You could have actually had it flat and then it would have been less.
Like what?
I mean, like, well, it's fine now. Okay, I have another thing
Wait,
with
where's-
yours. Oh my god, if I broke my right hand, I'd be done. It'd be over.
Oh yeah, I was out for like 6 weeks.
The blood work. I hate stuff on my hands. It's real sticky, but it was really, really cool. I like the aspect of everything, like the creativity on the scene, everything. So I'm really excited to see how that goes.
Pretty much at this point, we're gonna put the blood on your fingertips, and you're gonna reach up, you're gonna touch his face, and you're gonna say, I tried my best to help you, Belle. And then you're gonna take your hand away, and say, you know what to do. Which means good.
And I just like.
This whole
I'm
episode
going out on a limb
notes.
here.
He's
I'm
doing
struggling.
Oh my god.
People don't normally touch me. Okay.
Ew.
I need therapy.
Hey, I'm right there with you.
No, this is as awkward as
People are
possible. I'm
icky.
ready to go now. Well, I had fun on this. Like a lot of fun over the past couple of years doing this. Real like excited. Like I'm really proud of how far the show's gone, how everything's gone. Like I have a whole lot of memories I can't really pass up. So happy about it. He's sad to leave.
In the ending scene where I'm hanging in chains and from hooks, it was painful. Painful. It was very painful, but it was a lot of very interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
Reach! This is interesting. This is like crazy sexy or something.
No explanation required. Well, there is. That's better than nothing.
Too bad I don't have another hand to spend.
The set where I'm hanging is like so painful, but it was really eerie, which was what you were trying to get at, and it was pretty sick. So I loved it.
Looks good. Looks like a corpse. Excellent.
You've heard
Yeah! I'm a good cook!
Academy Award in death.
Sweet.
Great.
Yeah.
Should I make like droplets?
Yeah, you could.
You can come as close to my juice as humanly possible. I'm just kidding. You know, I don't really care. They're 68 cents.
That's enough
yeah, you did.
droplets. Yeah.
I can get more.
Direct me, what looks better.
A tiny one there. All right. And then one closer to the jeans between the two that are like separated with one underneath them.
This here?
But yeah, don't, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
That's fine. That's fine. Here, you can do a withdrawal spatter. I don't know.
So I had to do a fucking report on her. Can't remember her
Really?
name.
Why
Yes.
her?
Or you just take one and just like the rest, like you can. Yeah, do that.
It's hard with the two.
You can do the candle and two people can do it at once.
That's alright. It's pretty much terrifying in here. Each room
No,
is just...
my arm, I thought I was gonna fall into the blood like my head. I was like, no! Shit!
Oh yeah, this.
I was just gonna fall. Splat.
When I walk on by, can't just go.
In the scene, if they go out, that's fine.
This one's fine, because it hasn't moved in the past 15 minutes.
Okay, let's undo this whole thing. Oh, sorry.
Right here.
And in the end, I thought that the episode was fantastic. Fantastical, as it were put. And it was enjoyable, and somebody should watch it.
Well, what do you think I'm doing right now?